Yo, I'm Q Harrison. This is the Sports Card Strategy Show with your man, Paul Hickey. What's good? No off season. When you get into this game, the reason why you pay someone like Paul Hickey to get your sports card strategy together is because sometimes when you're starting out, you need perspective, you need wisdom, you need insights. And so he's been around the track enough times where he can actually coach you up and guide you. Doesn't mean he's going to take you to the promised land tomorrow, but you now have a coach by your side that can advise and kind of even create these pathways where you can get the education yourself. And that's a lot better than thugging it out on your own.
What's up, everybody? I'm Paul Hickey with NoOffSeason.com. This is the Sports Card Strategy Show. Don't forget to get a free 30-day trial at NoOffSeason.com today to help you make money flipping sports cards, build your sports card investment portfolio, get unlimited advice from our experts, and take sports card school to navigate the hobby. That's NoOffSeason.com. Get your free 30-day trial today. All the data we use on the Sports Card Strategy Show is from MarketMoversApp.com. Use code NOOFFSEASON at MarketMoversApp.com to get 20% off for life after a free 14-day trial. All right, let's get to the Sports Card Strategy. Come one, come all, welcome in, whether you're a beginner, an advanced flipper, or a high roller, or a combination of all of the above. I'm Paul Hickey. This is the Sports Card Strategy Show, Monday, October 28th. Happy Monday, everybody. I'm excited for today's episode because we are going to look back at what has worked best so far in 2024. 2024 is almost over. There's 2 months left. 2 months and a few days left in 2024. And we're at a point where the prices are about to hit rock bottom. So many of us are done with our plays. We've closed our sales for the year. Some of us are still liquidating the final sports cards that we're holding on to for the season and determining what we want to hold heading into 2025. But in the next few weeks, it's going to be a putrid time to sell sports cards as prices will plummet. There's a lack of interest in card shows this time of year. Fanatics has not been able to have show number 2. They canceled Pittsburgh. They canceled Orlando. They're waiting till 2025 to try to get things together. The last few card shows I've been to this fall have not been well attended, unfortunately. And I think it's just a microcosm of the hobby dying down towards the end of the year. Q4 is never a hot selling season. Prices typically do not go up in Q4. They go down. And I expect many prices to hit an all-time low very, very soon over the next couple of months, which makes it buying season. And so what do we want to do? We want to learn from what worked well in 2024 and from what didn't work well. So I'm excited to get into that data with you today. I've teased this episode for a long time. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about a couple other topics, and we've got a guest from Cards to the Moon and 5 Card Guys, Clark Kim, who I talked to a couple of weeks ago, is rejoining me on the show. The couple other topics I wanted to talk about is shame on PSA for doing this. 3 Sports Illustrated for Kids cards that I sent in, a Travis Bazana a couple of months ago, a Ludwig Oberg. Many of you remember me talking about Ludwig Oberg on the show. I was very excited to have these Sports Illustrated for Kids cards graded, and Zachary Rissacher. Okay. And so unfortunately, PSA did a weird thing that I've never seen before. And they sent back these 3 SI for Kids cards with something called a no spec info, no grade voucher, do not holder sticker on them. And I saw this in my PSA dashboard, and I got a little annoyed by it, to be honest with you, because I did provide the spec info, and it is a legitimate card. We've had issues with PSA, with the N6 designation, with these cards and some other cards. It's ridiculous. And I think we're seeing a theme. Anything that's coming from New Jersey, which I think is like a newer PSA satellite office. So the New Jersey PSA satellite office, I think what's happening is, as PSA has scaled their operation, they've hired graders from around the country to grade remotely. And so when you ship your cards into California still at their headquarters, I believe they're distributing them to graders around the country that are in remote locations. And then if those remote graders are on the East Coast or the eastern half of the United States, those cards that they grade are shipped in for encapsulation and QA on the East Coast and in New Jersey, and then they're shipped out. And I think that if it's on this is just me guessing, based on the amount of submissions that I make. I make a ridiculous amount of submissions. Thank you to all of you in the nooffseason.com fam who grade through me as premium members of nooffseason.com. Hopefully you're having a great experience, and I'm happy to help you out. If any of you have questions on that, just go to nooffseason.com/ask, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that service. But my experience is that most of the cards are coming back from California, and you can see it on your FedEx tracking. But some of the cards are coming back from New Jersey, and I've had issues with the cards coming back from New Jersey. I've had more N6 designations, and when I've sent the N6 designations back to PSA, they get graded, which makes no sense. And then this is a new one, and this was from New Jersey, of course, these no spec info. So let me know if you've had these no spec info issues. Maybe I'll send these into CGC, the perfect place to slab your favorite sports cards. From their crystal clear holders to their affordable pricing, CGC Cards is the perfect stop for your grading needs. Go to cgccards.com to start grading today. Let me know in the comments at youtube.com/Paul Hickey if you've had this happen, and if you think there's a difference between the quality that you've gotten from packages coming back from New Jersey from PSA or from California from PSA, and what you think I should do with these cards. If I should resubmit them to PSA, which I think I might do, or maybe I'll send them to our friends at CGC Cards. So that was one topic I wanted to talk about. I did want to talk about the fact that I think there's going to be a dip over the next 2 to 3 months. I already kind of hit on that in the intro. I've just seen a lot of data cards. There's been less of a runway in the hype ramp up season before different sports kick off, if it's football, tip off, if it's basketball, opening pitch, if it's baseball, whatever it is, that runway has shrunk. And what I mean by that specifically is we used to see prices rise due to the hype of a season starting for a particular sport. And you might see the hype starting a couple of weeks before that sports season starts and then continuing on for another couple of weeks. Now what we're seeing is the hype die off, like basically right after those first games are played, and then the prices just go down unless there's a massive performance spike by a player. And so I think what you're about to see in this data that I'm going to walk you through in terms of what worked best in 2024 and how we can learn from that and what plays I'm going to be making moving forward. It's good timing to have this conversation. Why? Because we're about to go into buying season, right? So as prices plummet, what does that mean? It means buying season. But how do we prepare for buying season? We do it by looking at the data that we're about to look at on today's show. So expect a huge dip. Don't panic. This happens every year, but I do expect more of a dip this year. So I would recommend that you liquidate all of your cards if you haven't already, unless there's just obvious ones that are in your portfolio that you know you're holding for a future selling marker, say come spring, come NFL draft, come next NFL season, or come NBA playoffs, NBA finals kind of a run. Okay. So expect the dip, but expect that dip to yield plenty of buying opportunities that we will take advantage of on the Sports Card Strategy Show and at nooffseason.com, of course, with our formula-based sports card rankings. We're adding dozens and dozens of new cards every week on the formula-based sports card rankings. So be sure to go over to nooffseason.com right now and get a free 30-day trial so that you can check out those rankings. Great buying recommendations. You're not going to get any better buying recommendations in the hobby than nooffseason.com's formula-based sports card rankings, prioritizing based on the likely ROI you're going to get from hundreds and hundreds of cards. So go check it out. No shortage of options in the hobby. We just want to help guide you down the right path and pick the right card for the right player at the right time to make money flipping sports cards. So we're going to talk to Clark Kim from Cards to the Moon about some of the decision that he's making this time of year. But before we do that, without further ado, let's get into the big decisions that we need to make. And so that we can do that, we're going to skip a week of going through the top cards to buy raw and grade. And instead, we're going to spend the bulk of this episode looking back at 2024, the plays that I've made and the learnings based on the data in terms of what worked best and what didn't work so well. And then at the end of the episode, we're going to make an announcement from Panini on a new top football high school 5-star prospect where they signed and what they're doing with Panini. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's go with my total wins and losses on the season. Here's what we're going to break down. We're going to go total wins and losses, total profit margin, right, that I made in 2024. Because I'm kind of my plays are dying down. Like we're gonna have a few sales trickle in here over the next couple of weeks, but for the most part, 2024 is coming to a close for me. And then I'm gonna start buying, right? And then as I buy, I'm gonna be either grading and then selling in the new year, or I'm going to be holding and selling in the new year. So overall, I profited 13.57% on all of the plays that I made. Okay, so overall profit margin, 13.57%. I made 506. I guess it would be 508. No, 506. Yeah, I'll be super accurate here. 506 total plays. Okay. So that would be, I guess, like, let me rephrase that. There were 506 total transactions that I tracked. There were less plays than that because some of the plays I made multiple times, right? So 506 total transactions that I tracked, which was, I may have missed 2 or 3, just because of the year being crazy. And I'm going to try to be more accurate heading into 2025. But I feel like I was very, very accurate in 2024, tracking everything. Mainly eBay transactions, but also some card shows and, a little bit of everything, but mainly eBay transactions. So we're going to break it down. 13.57% profit made on all of my transactions. So I was in the positive, a significant dollar amount, but 386 wins and 120 losses. So the win-loss record actually pretty good as well. But I also lost a lot more than I thought I was going to lose. And I, from a dollar amount, didn't quite end up where I wanted to be at the end of 2024. And so one of the reasons for this exercise is to go through and figure out how I can be more efficient and how I can help all of you be more efficient moving forward. Because if you're spending tens of thousands a year on sports cards, you want to make probably more than 13.57% profit margin, right? Like I would like to make double that at least. You know what I mean? I'd like to make double that at least, if not, 3 or 4 times that amount. And I think I can in 2025 based on what I learned in 2024. So let's get into it. First, let's start with kind of a fun player overview. This just kind of gives you an idea of like the players that I was most invested in the past year and how the player overall ended up. Now, player overview, I don't think means as much as some of the other data that we're going to get into. Like we're going to get into buying from eBay, buying from print on demand, like Panini and Topps, buying at card shows, buying higher dollar cards, buying lower dollar cards, already graded flips, and cracked and regraded flips. So there's a lot of different types of plays, but I mean, the players are important. So it's important to look back at the players that I bought, at the players that, you know, you guys go through this exercise on your own potentially. And oh, by the way, premium members of nooffseason.com are going to get the ability to track all this at no additional cost. So if you join nooffseason.com before the end of 2024, at no additional cost, you're going to get inventory tracking. You're going to get a ton more sports card school lessons in 2025 that really bring all of what I'm about to talk about on today's show into much, much further detail and marry it together with everything that we're doing, from the formula-based rankings to the premium pod and everything like that, and give a lot of context around the data that we're going to talk about today. But you're also going to get a card grading and consignment dashboard for those of you that do that with us. So it's going to be a much more advanced tracking system in your premium account at nooffseason.com moving forward, starting probably no later than January 1st. For anyone who joins as a premium member after January 21st, after December 31st, 2024, it's going to cost a little bit more than if you join before December 31st. Okay. So we're going to get into a lot of data here. Let's start with players. So Anthony Richardson was a guy that I spent about $1,600 on. I netted $124. So I made 7.51% net profit on Anthony Richardson. And we'll get into some takeaways towards the end of this, but let's go through. This is kind of fun to look at the players, right? Arch Manning was a guy that I spent $2,227.16 on. And if you add all these numbers up, like, it's not going to give you the total number that I spent on sports cards and the total number that I netted, but I'm just pulling out like the most significant ones. And I made a total net profit on Arch Manning of $497.09. So I netted 22.32% net profit on Arch Manning. So far, Arch Manning is number one. Bronny James, unfortunately, this didn't pan out. Like, I bought into Bronny James a lot before his cardiac arrest, and then I bought in a little bit more during the price drop as he was kind of struggling at USC. So I did make some profit on some Bronny James cards, but overall I spent $881.36 on Bronny James cards, and I lost $170.07 on Bronny James cards. So I lost 19.3% on Bronny James cards. My biggest Bronny James loss was on and actually this might, oh no, this is right. Yeah, this is right. Wait, this doesn't have my PSA 10. I don't know if this is correct, actually, guys. Let me set the record straight on my Bronny James, because I think I'm actually missing a Bronny James sale, to be honest with you. So let me find that sale and I'll be right back. All right, so I knew there was a win. There was a win on a Bronny James card. It wasn't a huge win. There were a few wins on Bronny James cards, but there were a couple massive losses. So it's not much different than what I said a minute ago. But instead of losing 19% on Bronny James, I lost 14.83% on Bronny James. So it was still a loss. For those of you who want to, want to question me on my Bronny James call and everything like that, fair enough. I did talk a lot about Bronny James this entire year, and the plays that I made did not pan out the way that I had hoped. Caleb Williams as well. So Caleb Williams, I put a lot into Caleb Williams. I put $2,448.02 into Caleb Williams. I did net $105.96 on Caleb Williams. So I did make 4.33% on Caleb Williams. I will say, though, that the Panini instant plays that I made towards the end of the year that you've been hearing me talk about a lot really, really helped. They added up. They helped get me in the positive on Caleb Williams. So I did win on some big Caleb Williams cards, but I did lose on some big Caleb Williams cards, kind of like Bronny James. Bijan Robinson was another guy that I invested in. This was taking a little bit of a risk in the skill position area. I spent $1,665 on Bijan Robinson cards. I lost $115 on Bijan Robinson. So I was negative 6.91% ROI on Bijan Robinson. Breece Hall was another guy. So I spent $1,404 on Breece Hall, and I made $11 on Breece Hall. And this is kind of fun to look at, right? Like, how many of you do this? Do you guys do this? This is actually, so this is like my 5th year flipping cards as a side hustle / full-time job, more recently as a full-time job. And I've never really done this kind of a breakdown. So I'm really, really hoping, and I really believe that this kind of a breakdown is going to help me net a bigger overall ROI percentage in 2025, but also more net money. Like that's really important. But efficiency is important. So efficiency is super important. And so far, Arch Manning has been our most efficient, but we're gonna get even more efficient as we go here. So Breece Hall, not very efficient, netted just under 1%, 0.78%. CJ Stroud was kind of another interesting one. And this is interesting too, because like I typically, like in sports card school at nooffseason.com, I say many, many times, don't buy a player's rookie card until like 6 to 8 months after all of their rookie cards have hit the market. Because that's truly their real supply. Like then you see their real supply and their real demand, and then their market plateaus, and then you can make plays. And I think CJ Stroud, case in point, because I dabbled in CJ Stroud a lot in 2024. I spent $2,610 on CJ Stroud and have so far netted $3. So out of all the players that I have mentioned, I'm still holding 2 pretty significantly large CJ Stroud cards and one that isn't significantly large. And I should make a net profit on those cards, but I'm going on. I'm going with the real numbers here. So total purchase price, I have $2,610 into CJ Stroud. I've netted $3. So 0.11% net profit on CJ Stroud. So I'm actually holding a total of 5 CJ Stroud cards right now. The other 2 are not. I actually have 3 pretty significant ones and a couple smaller ones. So CJ Stroud, not the efficiency that we would have liked to have seen out of him, but when you marry that together with some of the things we talk about at sports card school, it actually makes sense. So why did I do it? Well, I thought maybe I could thread the needle, especially with a lot of the raw to grade stuff, but it still ended up kind of falling exactly where it should have. CJ Stroud didn't end up netting as much as if maybe I would have waited and followed my own guideline and strategy because he still has rookie cards coming out. Topps, surprisingly, so when I bought a lot of the Prism, Topps had not announced that they were going to come out with Composite yet. And then when Topps came out with Composite, that blew the roof off of CJ Stroud cards. So some of the time you just get hit in the mouth by an unexpected thing that happens in the hobby, which in this case was just a ridiculous amount of additional CJ Stroud supply that nobody was really anticipating. And I think, not to make excuses, but I do think that that's why. Nevertheless, moving on, Drake London was a guy that I talked a lot about in 2024, and made the point in January and February that the Falcons were going to get a new quarterback because they were going to get a new quarterback either in free agency or the draft. It was going to bring a lot of hype to their offense. They got a good young offense. They also got a new head coach. So I wanted to play the offseason hype market. And I would say the offseason NFL hype market did me well with 2 Drake London cards. I spent a total of $666 on Drake London, and I netted $405. So from an efficiency standpoint, Drake London netted me 60.83% ROI. So that was the NFL sleeper play, buying when, before something could potentially happen on the calendar. And those were 2 higher dollar cards. They were already graded, which is interesting as well. We'll get into higher dollar versus lower dollar cards, and then raw to grade and already graded in a second. Drake May was another guy that I dabbled in to try and see if I could make money on the NFL draft, and didn't work out great. It was kind of a wash, but spent $759.95 on Drake May, and lost $14.52. So negative 1.91% ROI on Drake May. So Drake London was the better Drake. And Dylan Cruz was another guy that, there's a few baseball prospects that I made big plays on. Dylan Cruz was one of them. Mainly lower dollar cards, pretty much all lower dollar cards, raw to grade. And spent $189 on Dylan Cruz. Did not get the grades that I was expecting to get on Dylan Cruz, and lost $13.50 on Dylan Cruz. So I was negative 7.14% ROI on Dylan Cruz. Now, the guy who was drafted right before him in the 2023 MLB draft was my most efficient play of all of 2024. And this is like, I really just have to chalk this one up to the formula at nooffseason.com, because if not for the formula, there's no way I would have even looked at this card, honestly. But Paul Skeens 2023 Bowman Draft Chrome, first prospect autos, raw to grade, got 2 PSA 10s, bought 2, and they each gemmed. And so it was $510 total into those cards. And I netted $3,150.36. So a 617.72% ROI on Paul Skeens cards. By far my most efficient play of the year, and really just a byproduct of following the formula, and kind of doing most of what the formula was telling me to do. And we've talked more on the Sports Card Strategy Show and on the premium pod to premium members about how do you add context around the formula so that you can be even more efficient with what the formula is telling you to do. And that's what I'm hoping to do in 2025. So the next guy, very efficient play here. Shout out to Lefty McKee, my co-host on Wednesdays, and also helps me out with the premium pod from time to time. Davison De Los Santos was a prospect that we added to the formula based on some conversation Lefty was having. And I bought 4 Davison De Los Santos raw Bowman Chrome first prospect autos, had them all graded, all in $269, net profit $170. So a 63.2% return on investment for Davison De Los Santos. So there's 3 baseball prospects in a row. Did pretty well overall on 2 of them. One of them was kind of a wash. Another one that I did okay on, and efficiency here is pretty good, even though the net profit ROI percentage isn't great, because there was only 1 card. So I bought 1 2023 Bowman first prospect auto for Wyatt Langford, and it got a PSA 9. And so I was $321 into that card. Net profit $34.46. So a 10.74% ROI percentage. But so it doesn't seem like high efficiency, but it was only 1 card. So not as efficient as the 2 Skeens cards or the 4 De Los Santos cards, but not bad. Shohei Ohtani. I made plays on 3 different Shohei Ohtani cards, $485 all in. Net profit $20.59 for a 4.25% ROI on Shohei Ohtani. Jackson Holiday. So now we're going to get into a couple of prospects. The 2 big baseball prospects that I made plays on. These plays were mainly at the end of 2023, but I'm counting them in 2024, which might be a little bit unfair. It's going to skew my numbers down a little bit. It's unfair to myself. I think my numbers would look better if some of these cards I could have left cards out that I bought in 2023, but I'm going to have cards in my 2025 report that I buy at the end of 2024. So I think it's always going to be like a calendar year report, but it's going to include cards that I buy at the end of the previous calendar year that I haven't sold yet. So I think it just staying consistent with that. Jackson Holiday, I made plays on 5 different Jackson Holiday cards, spent a total of $1,632.20 and lost $477.99. So this is my worst. Like everything else, even like the Bronny James, and like, let's see, Bronny James, Bijan, and Drake May and Dylan Cruz were like kind of breaking even though they were just under. And we talk about that all the time, like that's going to happen. But this was pretty bad, negative 29.29%. So very, very disappointing. Like, I think it just came down to the fact that Jackson Holiday, when it was all said and done, was just overpriced all along. He never really had the spike for anyone that I'm aware of when he was called up. So Jackson Churio was the other guy. And in fairness, he was more my guy, but still, I spent $1,289.79 78 cents on Jackson Churio. I did net $177.80 on Jackson Churio. Not a horrible efficiency rating, but not great. 13.79%. Now, the second best efficiency rating all year to the Paul Skeens play was the Caitlin Clark play. So the Caitlin Clark 2024 Panini Instant WNBA Draft Night DN1, bought 25 of them, as we like to call a grenade of 25 from Panini. Submitted them to PSA as soon as I got them. I got 21 10s, 4 9s. Probably my best gem rate ever on any Panini Instant play that I've graded. And so $500 all in, and a total net profit of $2,495. So a 499% ROI on Caitlin Clark. That was the only Caitlin Clark play I made in 2024, and it was a damn good one. So she kind of saved me there with the raw to grade from Panini Instant. Joe Burrow. So I talked a lot about Joe Burrow and felt like he was underpriced most of the offseason. So a lot of my Joe Burrow plays were in the offseason and liquidating him before the start of the NFL season. So I was able to land some significant net profit on Joe Burrow cards. And again, I'm still holding a couple. So much like CJ Stroud, these numbers are going to skew negatively to me. Like I want people to see that I'm not padding my stats. I want people to understand that I'm still actually holding some of these cards that I'm still likely to sell for a profit, but I can't include the profit numbers in the numbers that I'm giving you. So what I'm doing is I'm actually including them in the total money in number, but not at all in the profit number, because there is no profit. So it's actually skewing the numbers slightly negative, but I thought this was the most fair way to do it, to represent how I did on my 2024 plays. So $2,204 into Joe Burrow, $921 total profit. So a total net profit ROI percentage of 41.79% on Joe Burrow. So pretty good. Not bad efficiency on Burrow. Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders was like my guy, right? I mean, as much as you could say Bronny James was my guy, Shedeur Sanders was really my guy. And I spent $6,133 on Shedeur. I net profited $412.57. Much like Stroud and Burrow, I'm still holding a couple pretty massive Shedeur cards, which I hope to help improve this number. But a 6.73% ROI percentage on Shedeur. So not great efficiency rating on Shedeur, but for a somewhat infantile market, I do feel pretty good about that. Same with Travis Hunter. So I made quite a few Travis Hunter plays. Didn't spend as much on Travis, but spent $775 on Travis, netted $71 on Travis. So 9.16% ROI percentage on Travis Hunter. Victor Wembanyama was another guy, obviously massive amount of plays that I made on him and that most of the hobby has so far. $3,681 into Victor Wembanyama in 2024. Net profit amount, $736.88. So a 20% ROI percentage on Victor Wembanyama. Now, this does not include the Sports Illustrated for Kids play I made in 2023. That was in 2023, so it's not included in this. And it also does not include the Tops Now, the two Tops Now plays in 2023, where I made a massive amount on Victor Wembanyama because those were in 2023. So this is only 2024 Victor Wembanyama. And what's interesting about Wemby versus Stroud is that I still profited 20% on Wemby, even though they're in the same situation, right? I bought in it at a point where I would normally tell people not to buy in. I normally tell people, again, don't buy in until 6 to 8 months after their last rookie card has hit the market. And the same thing happened with Wemby that happened with Stroud. Stroud's total net profit ROI amount for me was like 0.11%, and Wemby's is 20%. So completely different. Okay, raw to grade. So now let's compare raw to grade to already graded to crack and resubmit. All right. This is interesting. This is interesting because this is where, when I go break down the numbers, if I break down the numbers player by player, I see where I would have done a lot better had I gone more in one direction than the other. So I'll explain. Raw to grade total, I spent $25,807.86 on raw to grade plays, meaning cards plus grading fees. I netted $7,082.70. So 27.44% ROI on the raw to grade. So for like Shedeur Sanders, for example, many of them were already graded plays, and some of them were crack and resubmit. So now, like CJ Stroud, they were basically all raw to grade. So like it kind of, I think in certain cases can increase your chances of making money. And same with Dylan Cruz. So in certain cases, it can increase your chances of making money with a player. And in other cases, it doesn't. But overall, raw to grade, 27.44% ROI percentage. Now, already graded cards, this is where I lost big in 2024. Already graded cards. Or just simply, like, many of these were already graded. Some of them were like raw that I just flipped raw. but I spent $23,340.27 on already graded cards in 2024 and lost $326.36. So negative 1.4% ROI percentage. And I think the reason why is I think some of them, you know how I always talk about buying in for auctions and not buy it now or best offer? Well, in 2024, I did a lot of best offer, and got my best offers were accepted on a lot of the cards that we, that I just flipped already graded, right? Or that I cracked and resubmitted, or that I sometimes graded. And I think, but mainly they were cards that were already graded, and they were for guys like Shedeur Sanders. They were for guys like, Carson Beck, right? Who I haven't really talked about Carson Beck yet. But because I'm still holding a lot of my Carson Beck cards, but, so Carson Beck's included in these numbers, but I just didn't share with you the overall Carson Beck statistics in the player breakdown. There'll be more of this at nooffseason.com, by the way, in Sports Card School in 2025. So this is just a preview of it. There's going to be a lot more for premium members at nooffseason.com. But the point being, already graded just didn't work because for most of the time you're leaving a comp. And so because you're leaving a comp, it's something significant has to happen with that card, with that player, to drive up the price of that card for you to actually profit. So already graded is really, really hard. It's not that it can't work. I mean, there's some wins in here, but there's some pretty massive losses too. So crack and resubmit was okay. Spent $8,945.60, netted $497.48. So 5.56% ROI percentage on the crack and resubmit. And I thought that was another good category to sort of pull out and talk about. Now, again, you're not going to be able to add up all of these numbers and get my total number for the year, because I'm pulling them out in like the best categories to talk about on this show. But cracking and resubmitting, just, it's a crapshoot. It's a crack shoot. Buying from eBay. So let's go buying from eBay versus buying at card shows next. So buying from eBay, I spent $52,521.05 on eBay. Of the cards I bought on eBay, I netted $3,961.56, or 7.54% ROI on eBay, which is pretty good. I mean, again, I know where I can gain my efficiencies now based on this breakdown, and I know what to do. I invested in too many players. I didn't keep my focus as narrow as it needed to be, and I bought too many cards for each player. I didn't keep my focus as narrow as it needed to be within each player. And I did too much already graded and cracking and resubmitting. So I think I could bring that eBay efficiency up a lot. And I didn't start using the formula. For those of you that don't know, the formula wasn't really launched until April. And so we had one whole quarter of the year of me making a ton of purchases. And remember, these numbers include a lot of 2023 purchases in November and December of 2023. So almost like half of a year without the formula, really. Buying at card show. So buying from eBay, 7.54 ROI percentage. Buying at card shows, 30.48% ROI percentage. So basically I spent $7,581 at card shows, netted $2,310.60 at card shows. Card shows are not as scalable for many of us as eBay is. So, which is why most of the program at nooffseason.com is around eBay, because it's scalable. You can sit from anywhere at any time and get any card you ever want and make any play you ever want whereas card shows are hard to get to sometimes. They can be expensive, and you don't always have the selection that you have on eBay. So sometimes you might go to a card show and, only walk away with a few cards. So $7,581 spent, $2,310.60 netted off of plays with which I bought the card at a card show, and the total ROI percentage with cards that I bought at a card show, 30.48 ROI percentage. Now I wanted to go high dollar cards versus lower dollar cards. So the number on the lower dollar cards that I'm going to give you isn't all of the lower dollar cards. It's one segment of the lower dollar cards. And it's a raw to grade segment of the lower dollar cards. But of all high dollar cards, I just want to show you on the high dollar cards, basically 184 pretty high dollar like high dollar card is anything over $100, right? So there's some cards in here that are $1,000. There's some cards in here that are $100, and they're everything in between. I didn't really buy anything over $1,000. I think the most expensive card I bought all year was like $1,100. So it's really, that's what I mean when I say high dollar cards. $50,000, $50,508.42 on higher dollar cards. So cards above $100, and net profit $2,596.41. So 5.14% net profit on higher dollar cards. That is not great efficiency. You really don't want to be spending $50,000 and getting a 5.14% ROI. So I know where to improve this. I need to buy less players, and within those players, I need to buy less cards. And within that, I need to do more raw to grade and less already graded. And a lot of cards that I bought at card shows that were in that pocket graded really well, and I made a lot of money on those. But also on eBay, like the Skeens card. I mean, for those of you who are kind of like, I can't find cards on eBay, that's on you too, because you can. And my biggest player of the year was that, right? So now Panini Instant Tops Now. So I wanted to do Panini Instant Tops Now plays. There were plenty of them. Like these include all of the ones that I did with the pre-sales, that I did with the Panini Instant Football, the NIL football, the RPS First Look for the NFL Draft. These are the Lamine Yamal Tops Now cards. These are also the Caitlin Clark. So all in on these plays in 2024, $1,928.97. Total net profit, $587.36, or 30.45%. So if I also in 2025 stay pretty laser focused on this being a significant slice of my portfolio, I think I'll do a lot better, which is what I want to do. I want to do a lot better, and I want you guys to do a lot better. So hopefully this data helped. There's going to be a lot more of this at nooffseason.com as we continue to add sports card school lessons in late 2024, early 2025. Stay tuned for that. The news from Panini: Vernell Brown III has signed with Panini. VB3, one of the nation's top wide receiver prospect from Jones High in Orlando, caught 70 balls for 1,363 yards and 10 TDs last season. So far in 2024, he has 51 catches for 664 yards and another 4 touchdowns. He has committed to play at the University of Florida. He joins Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Dylan Raiola, Arch Manning, Julian Sayin, and Zachariah Branch as collegiate and high school football standouts who have exclusive partnerships with Panini. So VB3 will have some solid cards. And again, I think that's relevant because we have made a lot of money on these types of cards in 2024, and we look to, again, in 2025. So speaking of making a lot of money, a guy that we love, who loves the hobby and hopefully loves us, Clark Kim, from Cards to the Moon has some opportunities to make a lot of money, and I challenge him on those opportunities in this discussion that we have. And we're going to learn a lot. Clark and I are going to continue to talk, create content together. So let's get into my most recent segments with Clark Kim of Cards to the Moon and 5 Card Guys on IG. Clark from Cards to the Moon and 5 Card Guys. How you doing, my man?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Good to see you again, Paul.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to talk to you. So last time we spoke, you mentioned that you have a card, a Luka Doncic 2018 Contenders Optic, rookie ticket auto, blue out of 99. Gorgeous looking card, by the way. And it's in BGS 9/5/10. And you said on the show that you were into it for around $6,000. Is that right?
Yeah, 63, 64 to be more precise. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So last week on the Sports Card Strategy Show, I presented some data, basically telling everybody that this first week of the NBA season, which we're in right now, is the time to go ahead and get your basketball cards listed, get them liquidated, because historical data shows that the prices will fall over the next few months before they rise again. And without boring everybody on all that data, people can go back and listen to the Sports Card Strategy Show from last week to kind of hear more about my case. But I want to pose a question to you and just kind of unpack this a little bit. I guess the first question is, have you considered selling this card or at least listing it for sale right now, knowing that when we look at recent sales data of this card, I mean, obviously we're not going to find too many sales in your exact grade, but when you look at the recent sales of this card, say in SGC 1010, which is a similar gem mint to gem mint comparison, even when you look at it, you know, in a PSA 10, there's not many recent sales, but when you look at the comps, it seems to me like you could make money on this card if you listed it for sale right now. Have you considered selling it?
That's a good question. The precise answer is no. I haven't considered it because I believe when we talked last, I have a couple of buckets in terms of what I like to collect and where they belong. And this card is kind of like my mid to long-term hold. You know, a nice higher end stud player that I don't mind holding on to. And Luka's, you know, if you look at the odds in terms of MVP favorites, he's top 3. So that's another, you know, reason why just to hold on. But I get what you're saying though, because I do agree that for the most part, before the beginning of the season, the hype cycle's there. People are just overly optimistic about their own players, their own cards that they hold, and generally speaking, it's a good time. So I understand where the question is coming from, but no, I haven't considered selling. Maybe after discussion, maybe you can convince me that I should at least list it for a price that I'd be good with. But no, I maybe it's out of laziness too. I don't know, because I know what you do, Paul. You do a lot of flips, and can I be honest? It seems like a lot of work.
It's so true. It is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And so thank you for allowing me to kind of interrogate you here, Clark, because I want to drill down on this a little bit further here for the audience. So not only does the data show that this is the time to, in general, list basketball cards, but we're seeing the runway shrink of the hype cycle leading up to each season. I'm concerned that this card is going to dip quite a lot before it could potentially rise again. And not only due to the historical data patterns, but also because it is Luka Doncic and he is coming off a heck of a season last year where he already exceeded expectations for the Dallas Mavericks, taking them to the NBA Finals. They added Klay Thompson. You know, on paper, they look a lot better this year. To me, it is the perfect recipe for a massive dip on this card before, and it would take, I believe, another Mavs finals appearance for this card to come back up again to where it is now. So I just ask you this, and you make a fair point that it is a lot of work, but I ask you this, Clark. So if you were to tell your wife that you're in this situation right now, what would she say? She
would tell me to sell 100%. Especially if it could be for potentially a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 profit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, take away fees. I think you'll probably be looking at maybe like a $2K to $3K somewhere in there, right? I mean, but Canadian, maybe that is $4K. I don't know. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. With the exchange rate the way it is now, it might even be $5K Canadian. So.
Okay, fair enough.
But you know what? You make a fair point, because I have Card Ladder, and the last sold price that just was, I guess it was published later because they don't publish a lot of alt listings right away, the alt marketplace platform, and it sold recently for $8,900 back in April, and that was of course during the playoff run. So that's the new comp, and I got it for 64. So that's all to say there is an argument to be had that this is a great time to list and see if there's any takers. And
so I also want to kind of dig a little bit further into the psychology of this, because I think this is where I go when I think about these decisions. When you bought this card, and through now, right? I mean, I'm sure like emotions change, like thoughts change, things change. But when you bought this card through the present day, what would you say your ultimate goal would be, just from like not even like a transactional goal, but just kind of like an emotional goal? Like, for example, would you want to be like the Toronto Blue Jays GM when they traded for Joe Carter and then won that World Series? Like, is it like, the equivalent of that, where you're buying this card at a certain price point? And we haven't asked you if you bought it raw and got it graded. That's another thing I'm interested in. Did you buy it in its current form in the BGS 9510? Yep. And then maybe like talk us through, just as you're holding this, is it a case where you're struggling listing the card for sale or selling the card? You mentioned laziness, because it is work, and that's fair. And I think that's actually like a big thing for people in the hobby. Not that people are lazy, but just that it is work, and sometimes they'd rather just look at the card than actually do the work of listing it for sale. And that's fair. Or is it like an emotional connection to the card where you're like, you just love the card? Or is it that fantasy sports GM type of feeling where you really, maybe it's not as much about the dollars and cents, but it's about sort of winning the game? For you, walk us through, like, what's your thought process with this particular card?
Yeah, all great questions. I would say, well, one of the questions you asked was, how did I acquire this card? So I just got it off eBay as a BGS 9.5. So I didn't grade it or anything. The card is still in this BGS 9.5 slab. So that's how I got it. But I think how I view this card in particular is that, and why I consider it more of a mid to long-term hold, is prior to this, I've liquidated a lot of my low to mid-end cards. The cards that we got when the height of the pandemic was going on, and all of it's lost its value up to 50, 60, 70%. I'm just liquidating as much as possible. You look into my sports card briefcase, it's about 1/8 full now, right? And then I just got liquidated. And then, with the dip in the market, all these higher end cards, like the Luka one, like the Luka one that I had, also dipped in price. So I'm trying to accumulate some of these higher end cards and then kind of stashing it. So that was my play for this particular card. There's like maybe 4 or 5 athletes I want to do that for. I'm always looking for a nice high grade Stephen Curry rookie card. I already have a Mike Trout rookie card who I'm still high on despite all the injuries. I'm looking for an Ohtani card, although right now it's a horrible time to get an Ohtani card. But, if there's a dip. So, like, there are a few cards that I just want to buy and hold on to, because I just really, really believe in that player long term, right? And Luka's one of those guys. But, that being said, I say this to my friends all the time. There's a number for every card. I'm not romantic about, 99% of my cards either. If someone came and said, hey, 12,000 cash, I'm like, it's yours. Like, I would do it right on the spot. So, but despite all that said, I'm okay with holding this card. Yet you make a compelling argument to reconsider that. So we'll see off air if I end up listing it or not.
All right. Well, I have one more piece of my hopefully still compelling argument here. And just real quick. So in PSA 10, according to Market Movers, this is a pop 4. And you've got a BGS 9.5. So I don't know what the pop there is. And we know that like the BGS 9.5 doesn't always transfer over into the PSA 10. But in PSA 10, it's a pop 4. And so we're dealing with a really rare card. And to me, part of the mystique behind holding a rare card and maybe holding it for like the massive selling marker is the story, right? It's the story of, okay, I believe in this player. I bought it at this point in time for this price. And then I flipped it at this other point in time later for this price. And I made X amount of money. It's about the story. So I think what I try to do is reverse engineer that story. And I say, okay, well, then really what's the difference between selling it now for a profit and selling it later for a profit? Do I really want to hold the card through the ups and downs that I know are coming? Or do I want to put myself in a position to maybe make more plays and have even more fun in the hobby? So the way that I like to play devil's advocate with people that are kind of holding the way that you're holding is I like to look at, what if we sold this Luka card now and made that, say $3,000 to $4,000 profit that we might be able to make? We all know this isn't guaranteed and things like that, because again, it's a really low pop card, but it is a good time to sell it. And then what if we went into a card like Luka's 2018 Prism Silver PSA 10, which is not that card, right? I mean, that particular card, the Luka 2018 Prism Silver PSA 10, actually has some of the opposite type of mystique towards it, where it used to be back in like 2021, a card that was going for several $1,000s, dipped under $1,000 and is now back over $1,000 US. But if you look at the way that market for that particular card has settled since then, it's a really stable asset. And currently it's a pop 2340, according to Market Movers, in PSA 10, the Prism Silver. And if you look at being able to move into that card, we're only about a month away from you being able to move into that card for really its low over the last 180 days. And we're 2 months away from you being able to move into that card and its 365-day low the closer we get to Christmas. So devil's advocate, what people could be doing, and I'm just using your card as an example for what everybody could be doing with their big cards, is they could be liquidating right now if it's a basketball card like this, but like literally right now, because the drop-off's about to happen. And then 2 months from now, move into either the same card, which probably won't be possible in your case because it's so low pop. But in your case, you could move into other cards for the same player for their 365-day low, and then watch as they rise into January and closer we get to playoff time. So from a sports card flipping perspective, that's my challenge to you. My challenge to you is, will you even list this for sale? Or are you gonna, and is there something here, Clark? Is there something in you that is more of a collector that's like, I really just love this card and I really just want to look at it for as long as possible and have it in my possession? Because the fiscally responsible thing to do, my friend, is to go ahead and move it now, get that cash, but continue to play the Luka play the way that you wanted to do it. Just do it with the market trends and time the market on a different card.
Yeah, that's pretty intriguing. A couple of things that came up to mind while you were kind of going through the talking points there.
Challenging you?
Challenging me. Is I guess it makes more sense if the money you play with or the money you use to purchase cards is only funded from the cards that you sell, right? So for me, like yourself, we're content creators, so I do get money that way, and I apportion some of the money that I make from content creation to buying cards rather than flipping all the time and using the money from what I flip for into reinvesting into cards. Sometimes I do that, of course, depending on the card, depending how much it is. So that's something I consider as well. Like, I don't need to sell this card to get into more plays. You know, I can get into more plays now while still keeping this card. And that kind of ties into your last point there. I do consider myself a collector. I love looking at this color match card. It's a beautiful card, on card auto, numbered to 99. So there is definitely that part of me that wants to hold on to the card and display it on my case where it is right now. You know, every time I walk by going to my ensuite bathroom, I see the card. I'm like, yeah, it's a nice looking card. You know, it's like you like to just, you know, just display it proudly, right? So I think that's why I would hold on to the 2018 Silver Prism. Is an interesting one that is an interesting take as well, because I used to own it and I did buy it for 2,000. I sold it for 12. Okay, so there's a history there. It hurts a little bit. I'm kind of over it now. That's okay. Yeah, that's what happens sometimes. But I get your point with how the trends follow with those kind of cards in particular. And when I say those kind of cards, I mean the lower to mid end is more predictable, whereas the higher end ones, it's a bit more volatile. It's not doesn't move according to seasonal trends or patterns as consistently as the lower to mid end, like the Silver Prism, so to speak. So I feel like there's not that direct correlation. Perhaps I could get a higher end card if I bought Silver Prism, but it could just be as equally likely that those higher end cards don't come down in price anytime soon, especially if Luka really does start to play well. Those high end collectors are going to hold for a bit longer, and it might even go up. So there's that risk as well, because ultimately my play is to collect more and more higher end cards for my personal collection, and then, you know, or mid to long term investment hold. And that's why I rather hold on to these cards, and then, you know, that's it's not mutually exclusive. That doesn't mean I'm not going to buy low to middle end cards to see if there's a play there, because I'm more likely to buy that separately, for example, Silver Prism, with the intent of selling it within a year, a much shorter timeline. So that's kind of my thought process as you're talking. I'm like, what would I do? And I think that's kind of my first thought when you played out that scenario.
Yeah, those are amazing points. I mean, first of all, like Clark just said, look, you know, I'm fortunate enough to have other income where I don't have to necessarily use my income from flipping cards to put into the next play. Kind of putting things in a vacuum and giving context around things, I think, is really important. Also, like, this does to me speak to what makes you happy, what makes you happy in the hobby. And, you know, what makes me happy is like selling 2 Paolo Banchero rookie ticket autos for a small profit before the season starts, rather than try to hold them and through the roller coaster of the price coming down and then maybe going back up again if the Orlando Magic make a run in the playoffs, and being okay with the value going up on those cards if the Magic do, for whatever reason, make a long run into the playoffs and Paolo Banchero maybe is this year's version of Anthony Edwards, just in the Eastern Conference, right? So I have to be okay liquidating my rare Paolo Banchero cards before the season even starts and taking that small profit. In my case, I made $600 profit on 2 Paolo Banchero cards, and having that be my story of what makes me happy, right? Yeah. And so I think for those of you out there, as long as you have all the information, right? And I think, Clark, you did an amazing job of like breaking down all the information. Look, this doesn't exclude me from making plays on other Luka or other basketball cards of more achievable amounts or higher pop counts or whatever. It just means I'm looking at things from a holistic perspective and making my decision on what's going to make me the happiest. Now, I joked about telling your wife about it, but the reason I did that is because on last episode that we did together, we talked about like, that's a very real side of things, right? Like that's a very real side of things. So glad that you don't need the money from the Luka card. I hope that card doesn't go down. There might not be any evidence. There might not even be a footprint of that card going down because it is so low pop. I just know that the data does say it's a good time to potentially liquidate a card like that and then probably buy back into other Luka cards. But again, you probably wouldn't be able to buy back into that Luka card because it's so low pop. All right, man. Well, hey, thanks for accepting my challenge. Well done.
That was fun. That was fun.
What do you got for me, brother?
Yeah. Well, before I go into my kind of question for you, just on this one more point on this Luka, do you consider, because I do to a degree, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but when you look at the peaks of the card, you're like, wow, it's dropped so much that we might be near the bottom. Of course, you can't ever time the market, but like this Luka card that I got, I think it peaked at 25 to 30,000 in the 3-4 years ago. So like for me, you look at the comparison, that's a nice, healthy drop into where I got it from. I'm like, okay, I think, I don't know, I can't see this card being, dropping even more because of the card itself. It's a numbered card, it's a color match. I think people are more educated now in the hobby. So this might be close to the base. Do you ever consider that, like in terms of where was the peak and the high? And then, like this might be a good card to invest.
Yeah, 100%. I think the only thing though is for a card this low pop, it's really hard to do that for a couple of reasons. A lot of, in this card's case too, being a 2018 card, it went through 2020, 2021, and 2022.
Right.
Really, I don't consider anything super valid for a card like this unless it's like 2023 through the current. So, and that could be the case with most cards. There are some cards, depending on the sport and the player and the scenario of that player, and I'll explain that real quick in a second, where I would look at a 2022 comp. But so you have to look at historical data for a card, and you have to know, okay, I'm buying in at a point where the data says is low, thus realistically the value could go back up. But I would typically throw out anything from 2021 and 2022. And I would typically, and it doesn't make sense for this Luka card, but let's say Victor Wembanyama. Like, because he's a 2023 rookie and all of his cards haven't even been out for really even close to a full calendar year yet. Like with the Topps Chrome release having just come out, and I think Prism came out in the spring, we're still 9 to 12 months away from Victor Wembanyama's rookie card market actually having real historical data that we can compare it to.
Right.
You have to get through like a full year cycle of a player into their second year to then go back and say, okay, here's a real trend to watch. Is this a low to then buy in to see if there's a potential spike coming based on historical data? So it really takes a long time on the calendar due to the release schedule, due to the fact that for the entire first couple years of a player's career, it's like increasing supply with kind of the same amount of demand. You have to let the market cycle kind of settle. So for Luka, for a higher pop card like the Prism Silver PSA 10, I'd be like, yeah, December is an amazing time to buy in because we see it going up into the spring. And if he does make it into the finals again, that card could definitely double. For your card, I find it a little bit hard just because it's so low pop and it's gone through the bubble bursting. Right. So I really wouldn't be able to add validity in this case to like a $30,000 sale. But I do agree, looking at this card, that it could have massive upside, maybe even above your 12K figure into the future. If Luka does win an NBA championship or multiple NBA championships, this could end up being a card that we could see. Maybe you end up auctioning off at a big auction house one day for 3-4 times the amount of what it's even worth right now. So, and I mean, I do think of all places to be patient on a card, I can't fault you for being patient with this one. So I think it's a good discussion though, because $2,000 or $3,000 is a real number that for most people is pretty significant. Even though you and I are fortunate enough to have other income, I think probably for both of us, it's like, it's pretty hard to imagine just kind of passing on that, which I think is why you say, hey, if somebody offered me 12K for it right now, I'd probably have to move it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the response. And that's a great point you bring up, because a lot of people put too much into that whole bubble era. And you should be careful about that too. So that's a good reminder for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't experience it. I mean, I think most of our audience at the Sports Card Strategy Show is new within the last like 9 to 12 months. So those people might go back and look at market movers and go, oh, wow, that card sold for $30,000. Yeah, and it was a real sale, but that's not going to happen again for the reasons that we all know who were in the hobby back then. You know, why?
Yep.
So
Point taken. Okay. My question is, I kind of alluded to this earlier about me being lazy, but the flip side of it is the work that you put into flipping cards. And I've put some reels in the past about like hobby boxes, like, 2024 Topps, flagship. And they're what, 80, 90 bucks per box. And then, you could get some hits, but then to flip, multiple cards from that box, you could get a certain profit amount back. But one of the main comments that I get whenever I post those videos is, but did you consider the time factor, how much time you put into it, and whether it's even worth it at a certain point to make these lower to mid-end flips on some of these cards. Is that something you think about when you talk about, I've been listening to some of your more recent episodes about the Topps Now or, the Panini Instant cards, where it is a low investment, but if you want to flip it, to grade it, there is some work involved. You got to allocate some time to it. I wonder if that's a factor as well in terms of like, time is money that people say, and if it's at a certain point, it is worth it or it isn't worth it. Is there a number that you have, or is it kind of fluid?
It's valid. First of all, it's definitely valid. It's something that I've talked about a lot for the last several years. As I've had more and less time in my life, I think it's become more real to me. So there was a point where I was working like literally 5 or 6 digital jobs and flipping cards and doing the Sports Card Strategy Show. It was when I was moving from Spain to the United States, and I knew like our cost of living was about to increase enormously from that move, and kind of supporting the family and supporting the move a couple of years ago. I was working all these extra jobs. And so my content at the time reflected that life scenario for me. And it did talk a lot about, hey, you got to be cognizant of how many plays you're making that are, say, under $50 or $20, because the time is a factor. Like if you're spending a lot of your time buying, receiving, unpacking, grading, receiving again, listing, making sure that you're taking good photos or grabbing the high res photo off of the grading company's website or whatever it is, time definitely adds up. I mean, now from that phase of my life, I've quit all of those jobs and I've become nooffseason.com and the Sports Card Strategy Show full-time and flipping cards full-time. So now my time, there's more time to make plays on smaller cards if the margin's there. But 100% you're right. I mean, my new routine over the last year has become like Sunday night, Monday morning, eBay, printing up labels, packing and shipping cards, filling up the mailbox. For me, if I can gain an efficiency in my process, then I'm going to do it regardless of the dollar amount of the card. But time is definitely a factor. And I think there's, for most of us out there that are watching and listening to this, the average profile of our audience is like middle-aged man that has at least one full-time job, supporting a family, and other responsibilities. And so I think that there is a sweet spot for most people that's around like the $50 to $100 raw to grade play with the upside, or a play like maybe your Luka play, or somewhere in between that and your Luka play, where you spend $1,000 on an already graded card, prospecting that it's at its bottom and it's going to go up. Right. It's a lot less work. Now we also have things like the PSA vault with eBay integration. of course, there's Fanatics Collect and a lot of other options. But so those can be time savers. But time is definitely a factor, man, for sure. 100%. Not everybody can be doing the Panini instant tops now stuff that I'm doing right now. I just happen to have the time. So I'm doing it and then trying to educate people on it. And it kind of goes actually like, what makes you happy? Does looking at the Luka card make you happy? And it could be both. Or for me, it's more of, I like the transacting. I like the feeling of, I made the transaction. I'm communicating with the buyer. I'm going to ship them the card. I'm going to put it in the mailbox. I like that feeling more than looking at the card.
Fair. Yeah. No, that's totally fair. I was going to add that too at the end. When I make some sales, even if it's like a low to mid end, or when I do giveaways where I don't get any money, it's kind of like, it's a nice feeling to send it to someone that, you know, bought it. They want the card. You know, that's like an intangible that sometimes we forget as well. So that's a good point.
Good question, though. I mean, time is definitely money for everyone, whether it's time that's being taken away from their family or time that's being taken away from something else they love to do, or time that's being taken away from actually making money. So, but I think I just don't want people missing out on making money in lieu of spending time listing the card and shipping the card, because in those cases, it's definitely worth the time. You know, when your cards are up in value from where you bought them at, take the time, guys, because the next day or the next week could be back down below what you paid.
Good point. Yeah, for sure. I know we usually try to slot a half hour because I know we're both busy, but one thing we did talk about, I don't know if you want to close with this, is just to talk about our eBay watch list. Do you want to do something like that?
Yeah, we could do that, and then maybe real quick, just go through just a quick Instagram post that I wanted to ask you about. But yeah, I can go through. Sure. Do you want me to go through my watch list, or do you have something you want to talk about?
No, you go first, and then I'll follow.
All right, sounds good. So recently, I decided, based on a lot of my data, and earlier on in the Sports Card Strategy Show episode that this is airing on, I mentioned what worked best and what didn't work as well in 2024. And one thing unequivocally that worked better is raw to grade. Raw to grade in 2024, for me, worked far better than buying an already graded card that I felt was at its low with a selling marker in mind. Even with the selling marker in mind, the profit margin just wasn't there as much as it was for the raw to grade. And so I challenged myself to look at players that I like moving forward that I bought already graded cards of, but do it in a raw to grade moving forward. And one player that I talked the most about in 2024 and probably at the end of 2023 is Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback currently for the Colorado Buffaloes, son of Deion Sanders, one of the more polarizing figures right now in the hobby. Most people either really love Shedeur or they really just don't believe in Shedeur at all and don't want to touch his cards. His cards are very expensive. So I happen to still profit, Clark, from the already graded Shedeur plays. But because I profited way more from the raw to grade Shedeur plays, I challenged myself, what can I do moving forward to continue to make money on Shedeur? So my entire eBay watch list and bids right now essentially consist of Shedeur Sanders raw cards. Some of them are as low as the Bowman U Tops Now release from 2023, where he's wearing these crazy looking sunglasses on the sideline. Right. Those go for about maybe $3 or $4. They're only selling in PSA 10 right now for around $30, but I believe that as the NFL draft in 2025 gets closer, the average sale price of that PSA 10 will go up enough to where it'll make sense from a raw to grade standpoint. So that's on the low end, where I'm buying a bunch of those, getting them graded. And I think that's a high ceiling, high floor, like, well, actually low ceiling, high floor play. Like, I think it's very safe with
Yeah.
a low ceiling. And then on the other side, going in and getting his refractor Bowman Chrome U first auto out of $4.99 raw right now is the card on the higher end that makes the most sense based on the data to go raw to grade. Because if you can get that for between $150 and $200 US, that's going to have much more of, say, $400 to $500 upside in a PSA 10 during April's NFL draft, April, May. Also, that card has a pretty long runway. I think all cards, what I've learned over the last year with these college quarterback cards is that all of them have a pretty long runway. We're still seeing Drake May cards right now after his first NFL start in his North Carolina uniform from the Bowman release sell pretty well. So I think Shedeur will continue to have multiple selling markers. He continues to look like the real deal to me. So while I've liquidated all of my Shedeur cards that I've purchased last year for a small profit overall, I'm now thinking, how do I take what I've learned over the last year and try to make money next year on Shedeur Sanders cards? So that's what my eBay watch list looks like right now. The other thing I'm doing, curious to your quick take on this if you have time too, is we created at nooffseason.com, we have a formula for our premium members. There's raw to grade, there's already graded, but we added graded to raw because there's so many cards that are selling more raw than they are in, say, SGC 9.5, SGC 9, PSA 9, and those grades, to where you could crack and sell raw. So the other part of my watch list right now, I haven't purchased a card yet that I'm going to for sure crack and sell raw. But I'm having fun looking on eBay for cards that are maybe SGC 8.5s, SGC 9s, cards like that are selling for more raw than they are in those slabs, because it would at least give me the opportunity to maybe buy one for a low cost and then determine, do I want to crack it out and sell it raw later, put it in a nice one touch, take good photos of it, list it on eBay. So that's the other thing I've got going on my watch list.
Nice. No, I appreciate that. You know, a lot of our listeners, because we're Canadian, we don't talk a lot of college football and football in general. So I'm sure many of our American listeners, which is like 90%, will appreciate how you explained your investment strategy, especially with Shedeur Sanders. So, but to answer your question about the raw, that's an interesting play. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but I feel like the reason why many collectors would buy raw is the hope that they can grade it and then substantially boost its value. So for me, if I see a raw card, I'm like hoping for at least a PSA 9. You got to do your homework. How much would that value go for? And then you know, there might be a play for a lot of people there. So that's interesting. And there are some, because I know, and this might be a good segue in a bit, other collectors on Instagram where I see a lot of them just wanting to just crack it out of their slabs and then just hold their PC in a nice raw one-touch case. So there seems to be more collectors doing that. So there could be a play there increasingly to crack out of the slab and sell it raw. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts.
Yeah, those are good points. I see a lot of that too. I've had a lot of firsthand experience with collectors just like asking me, will you crack this for me? Because I just don't want it in this slab, which is interesting. Yeah, I kind of forget about that. And I know a lot of people, I'd be interested to see what the audience thinks about the idea of buying a slab, cracking it, and then selling it raw. I know it brings up a lot of emotions for people, but I've seen both sides of it. So I emailed you a link to a couple Instagram posts of a content creator that I have a ton of respect for. I'm in fact pretty good friends with him, Jeff Wilson, and Sports Card Investor. I'm fortunate enough to have built a relationship with everybody there and struck up a friendship with Jeff and everything like that. And so I think this is the difference between me and other content creators. And I just respect you and feel like I want your take on this in front of everyone. So like for me, when I see a post like the one that Jeff and Sports Card Investor made, where they specifically went and filmed Nat Turner's collection of precious metal gems cards in PSA slabs. I look at that post and I have zero, not even zero interest in it, but like negative interest in it. Like as much as I love Jeff and Sports Card Investor, like I see those kinds of posts and I am just like, who cares about this? Like what, like to me, it's not helpful. There's no value in it. Maybe it's because I already knew Nat Turner collected these. I've already heard Nat Turner on other people's podcasts talk about that he collects these. Maybe it's because I'm not a billionaire like him and I can't go out and afford all these PMGs. Maybe I'm a little bit bitter about that. I don't know, subconsciously. Right. But I look at a post like this and I'm kind of like, okay, so there's 1% of people that can go out and afford a collection like this. And then you have a content creator going out and just basically showcasing it in front of everyone. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way also, I think, to the point where I'm like, do we really have to be posting this kind of content all the time? And who really cares? And like, then I start to question myself, like, am I an ASS? Like, I mean, I don't want to curse on your show. I'll curse on my show, but like, am I a jerk? I mean, like, why do I look at posts like this and I get so like, who cares about this? Now I don't reply. I don't do anything negative. I just kind of like, people can do this. There's nothing wrong. Like, of course, obviously Jeff posts it because people like it, but that's when I feel like an outsider. Like, why do people like it and I don't? Clark, help me out here.
No, I like this. Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate. Personally, I don't care as much about it as well, because PMG is not my thing, but I do understand the value in it. And the way I would see it is that for many, it's aspirational, right? You see these high-end collectors and you're like, okay, maybe one day I could work up to having an amazing collection like this. Like if you go to a sports card show, how many people stop at those booths that have $1 million cards? You're like, wow, this is ridiculous. I'm never going to be able to afford it, but I'll gander and take a look at what these cards look like in person. And I think with the, how everything's digital now, it's just another way of bringing it closer to the masses, so to speak. And for sure, not everyone's going to care about it. You're not the only one that's going to, you just even communicating how you feel about it. You're definitely not the only one that feels that way either, right? And I know Jeff Wilson has his distractors, and we've been on the record on the podcast. We respect Jeff Wilson too. I think what he's doing for the hobby is a good thing, and he brings a lot to the community, in my opinion. But I look at that post and it's an amazing collection, and yours might you might not aspire exactly to want green PMGs, the complete set. But that's something that you could possibly work towards, and doing the plays that we talked about earlier in the show, building up to where you can get those high-end cards, and maybe even start to set collect, and then you might have your own collection where you kind of show it off to people that would appreciate looking at nice cards. So that's how I see it. I don't mind it, to tell you the truth. It's one of those things I'll stop for a second and I'll keep scrolling, but at the same time, I see why it can grab attention, right? And if you go onto my 5-Card Guys Instagram page, most of those cards are on auction. They're worth at least $1,000, most maybe $2,000 or $3,000. Yet it gets a lot of attention because people like seeing nice looking cards. I don't know if it's innate within collectors to see cards that most of us can't just buy on any given day, but it's something, you might put on your watch list, and maybe one day it will be attainable. So I think that's kind of my argument for these kind of posts. It's just aspirational in nature.
Yeah, I think that is totally fair. And I think it's like human nature is, and the nature of social media. I mean, Jeff is a marketing genius, and he understands that the human nature, especially with social media, is to bring in eyeballs through like high dollar, really, really rare types of situations. And he's just as good as anybody is at doing that. And whenever I post, like I've started to do more Instagram reels, and what I see in the numbers is that whenever I actually show cash in the reel, that does like typically 5 to 10 times better from a view count than when it doesn't like actually show cash.
Right.
And so I think like people just want to see these higher dollar rare situations. And I guess I've already made this clear, but I'll just say like, for me, I'm not that guy. Like I really don't care. And it's almost gotten to the point where I am unsure what to do when I'm on Instagram, because it feels like it's so much driven by, hey, look at this card, look at this big pull, hey, look at this $1 million card. And I want to try to take it. Like, I like that you think it's aspirational. I think one thing I'd like to try to do is understand like what types of collections could people put together that are cool, but can they really aspire to do something like that? Like, I think it's aspirational and it's motivational to maybe build their own version of a collection.
Right.
But I would say it's not possible for any of us to really go out and do what Nat Turner's done with the PMG collection. I mean, just like it's really not possible for people to go out there and like actually get the real rainbow, because you have to have the one of one. So, you know, like, I guess this is me coming at it from a standpoint of, it's great entry level content for people to get into the hobby, to see, yes, there's a lot of interesting things happening here from a high dollar standpoint, which I think is what's going to get everybody in. But then once they're in, they're going to get slapped in the face with the fact that they really can't go out and build a collection like this, like Nat Turner has. But what kind of collection can they build? What can they do? And I think people like you and I can kind of show them the way, right? So I think I want these posts and our discussions around these posts to mean something other than me just bitching about them. So, but I do think it's also a good opportunity for me to vent a little bit to someone like you and go, hey, like what's the point? Like what's the point other than growing his social media following? You know?
I think you kind of already mentioned one of the points is, sure, I agree with you 100%. You and we won't be able to get that full complete PMG set. You know, it's just not within our budget. But, you know, I have a full set of the Topps home field advantage. People on my podcast, Cars to the Moon, will know that I collected it because it's, you know, on average $10 to $15 card, but it's nice and shiny. There's, you know, it's easily collectible. There's 30 cards in the set. And you know, it's kind of like, okay, I can't do the $1 million version, but I could do the $100 version of this. And that's something, you know, I might have gotten an idea from in terms of set collecting or subset collecting by seeing others kind of do the same. And it doesn't have to be exactly apples to apples, orange to orange, but you do your own version of it within your own budget, right? And the other thing I was thinking about too is some people might just really like the PMG, and for them, they know it's not realistic to do a set, but maybe it is realistic just to get one card of their favorite player in a PMG. And that's something, you know, that's doable for more people than what Nat Turner is doing. So I think at the end of the day, it can give you additional ideas of what you want to collect based on other people's collections. There's a possibility for that too.
I think you win, Clark. I think you win that one. I think you win that segment of why should we care about this?
This is a good segment. We you know, as we do more of these, we might want to get a third person, like an arbiter, to decide who wins.
we need John or Hyung or somebody. We need, or maybe I mean, you're like Denny cards.
Maybe.
do we need Denny? I mean, that's a whole other topic of social media content. I don't know if
there's some controversy there,
but yeah, we need somebody to come in and tee up the topic for us, right, and then have you and I give our takes on it.
I like it. We can discuss more.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we've gone over time, and it's easy to do because I talk too much and you bring too many good points to the table. So
it was fun as usual.
Time, brother.
Likewise. Can't wait to connect again soon.
My guy, Clark Kim from Cards to the Moon and 5 Card Guys on IG. Thanks for joining me, Clark. Let us know what you think, everybody. Drop a comment below at youtube.com/Paul Hickey. And thanks for joining us on this episode of the Sports Card Strategy Show. It's going to be a great week. Let's make some money flipping sports cards. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much for being here with us on the Sports Card Strategy Show. To connect with us further, please subscribe to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Paul Hickey. Please also give us a follow on Instagram at Sports Card Strategy and on X at No Offseason Card. We also have a Discord that you could join at sportscardstrategy.com. Everyone, I'm Paul Hickey. For the rest of us here at nooffseason.com, have a great day. We'll see you again soon.